More about how tariffs are impacting the U.S. solar industry. I am joined now by Paul Grana, who is the co-founder of Folsom Labs, which makes design tools for the solar market. Now, first question, as U.S. negotiators head to Beijing to discuss the issues, what do you hope will come out of these meetings for the solar industry?
I think all of us here hope that we can ideally roll them back. In many ways, it's certainly hampered growth to have the tariffs on the modules. Luckily, we've been fairly resilient. It was something where having the extra cost definitely hurts the hurts the ability to install systems that make financial sense. Though really, like, most of the problem was uncertainty. Actually, as bad as the tariffs was the uncertainty surrounding the tariffs. For most of last year, there was such tight supply as people were trying to buy modules not knowing what would happen, that the prices went up by 30%. So even though the tariff announcement was a shock, quite literally to the price, what most of our customers found is that the market price immediately fell, so that now we're paying the same price, but now instead of the market price being 30% higher, now we're just paying a higher price by those extra
So
tariffs.
that period of not knowing what they were going to decide really shook the market.
Absolutely. So, and it applies different to all three industry verticals. So if you think about the way residential and commercial and utility scale behave differently, on the residential and commercial, what happened was people were holding off on hiring. We saw that ourselves because those are our users. So our users who were using our software were holding off on hiring, and for 4 months we saw growth flatten. Then, as soon as the tariffs were announced, we saw a huge uptick. In fact, March was our biggest month ever in terms of new users, and that reflects hiring, because now at least there's not the political uncertainty associated with how bad will this be, will this bankrupt my business. On the utility scale side, they're much more price sensitive, and so it's actually going to have a material impact. It already is having a material impact on utility scale volumes as well.
So installer jobs may have been hit the most during that time.
By far.
Were there any winners out of this?
There are very few winners. I mean, if you look, so perhaps you might argue that the SolarWorld acquisition by SunPower might have created some winners there, but probably not that many. But in general, it's the kind of thing where we're, especially speaking as an American and focusing on just American jobs alone, we are hurting ourselves. We are costing ourselves tens of thousands of downstream jobs in installation, maintenance, sales, and generally operating these assets. The analogy that I always think about is if you think about cell phones, we don't complain that cell phones aren't made in the U.S. They're designed in the U.S. They enable a lot of American companies to build businesses around mobile phones, but we don't make PCBs anymore, and that's okay. And it's also totally fine that America doesn't make solar modules anymore. It doesn't have to be our focus. There's a lot that we can do, but part of a global industry is there are certain industries that make sense in some markets and not others. And I think a lot of people here would much rather have low price modules that then enable hundreds of thousands of jobs for people who are actually installing them on the roofs, and those are wonderful jobs that you can't have shifted with politics.
So, taking into account, what do you see as the outlook right now for the years ahead for solar?
Yeah, so luckily, I'd like to say that our worst years are behind us in terms of the political uncertainty. Hopefully, if this has been the primary salvo, if anything, if we can pull it back, that would be ideal. But like I said, probably the bigger problem was the uncertainty, and so now that that's gone, I think things are looking good for us. Even frankly, the fact that there's a federal tax credit as well, and that's actually ramping down also. That's also really important. That yes, there's a 30% ITC. That if you spend $10,000, you get a $3,000 tax rebate. But we don't need that forever. We want to be an industry that doesn't require any sort of political subsidies, anything like that. And so even that 30% ITC is actually ramping down something to, I think it ends at 10% in the year 2022, roughly. So we just want to be on a level playing field. We just want, to be treated like any other power supply. And certainly there should be, prices on carbon, things like that. But, going forward, having just visibility and planning.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul Grana, for joining us. The take on how the U.S. solar industry is viewing the tariffs. We'll have more from the Chinese side coming up tomorrow. Back to you, Susan.